Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, July 1st, 2025. Today was our monthly food distribution. Yesterday, 13 of our volunteers went up and packed 72 boxes, and today 7 volunteers helped carry them to the cars. We helped an estimated 38 families, approximately 153 people. It's good to be in partnership with our friends at Caring Ministries and Iglesia Bautista Cristo Bien. You know, one of our kids was not very communicative. Most of their answers were always single syllables. How was school today? Fine. What'd you do? Stuff. Well, what kind of stuff? School stuff. We ended up having to ask questions like, tell me 3 things your teacher said today. And it was always a challenge to try and communicate. The Apostle Paul writes to the Colossian church and encourages them to communicate with their sister church in the next town over in Laodicea, to talk with them about the letters and to share together the letters they'd received. In Colossians chapter 4, verses 16 to 18, and I'm reading from the New Living Translation, 2nd edition, it says, after you've read this letter, pass it on to the church at Laodicea so they can read it too. And you should read the letter I wrote to them. And say to Archippus, be sure to carry out the ministry the Lord gave you. Here is my greeting in my own handwriting, Paul. Remember my chains. May God's grace be with you. He says, share this letter with the sister church in the next town over. We no longer have Paul's letter to the Laodicean church, but the Colossians got to read it, and they were encouraged to read each other's letters. Paul knew that these letters were not just to read once and stick in a drawer, but intended to be read and shared and communicated with and talked about and shared with one another. And then he picks on one specific individual. He says, remind Archippus to do what God wants. I kind of think this was a little bit of a kick in the pants for Archippus. Get off your high horse and be obedient. Get off your couch and do what you're supposed to be doing. This is more than just a nudge. This is kind of a public calling out that Archippus needs to get busy about what God wants him to do. I hope we're never in a situation where we need that kind of nudge. But even more, if we are, I hope there's somebody nearby that cares enough about us to give us that nudge to do what God wants us to do. Now, Paul usually had someone else do all of the physical writing that he instructed. He gave the words and they put them down on the paper. But this letter, the last couple of lines, he signed himself. I think he probably had some bad handwriting that was hard to read, and he got somebody that had better handwriting for them. But he signed this own letter. Here's my greeting in my own handwriting, Paul. And he says 2 things. He says, remember my chains. That's a prayer request, reminding them that he was in prison. And he says, pray for me. I hope if you're in prison or you know someone in prison, that you pray for them, because that's a tough place. And I hope that you're praying for them. And then he says a benediction, a final word. May God's grace be with you. And that is my hope and prayer for each one of you today that watch these little devotionals. May God's grace be with you and bring enrichment and peace to your life. God bless you.